Good evening, everyone. Today is Thursday, October 10th. Can I please get a motion to come back into public session? Motion by Marjorie, second by Rory. All those in favor?
Aye.
7-0. Great, thank you. So good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're always like having the public join us for meetings. Tonight, we are going to hear from both our internal and our external auditor, so we're looking forward to their presentations. And before we begin, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So this evening, we're going to hear two presentations. Our external auditor will be presenting first. Our internal auditor may be presenting a bit later in the meeting. They're presenting at another school district and then coming here after. So we may have to run through the meeting and then return back to their presentation. So it is lined up right now to be right after the external auditor, but just so people are aware. And just in terms of the order of operations for the meeting, we do have our presentations, and then prior to our consent agenda, we have an opportunity for public comment. So you'll hear the presentations about the audits, and then the opportunity will be available for you. So we're going to start this evening with some committee reports. So audit committee obviously met and reviewed both the external and internal audit. At the committee level, we do a very extensive review of the information that they provide. What they provide during the board meeting is more summative, and it's more of a summary. So we had a really thorough audit by both teams, and we're really grateful for the work that they did, and we'll talk more about that. We'll introduce them when we get to that part of the meeting, but that's really the report from the audit committee. Facilities, Marjorie?
Yes, I do have a report. Thank you. So first, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation at the last board meeting. I know it feels like a very long time ago, but the board last met on September 19th, and we were joined by our architects and our construction managers. And thank you to Lisa and Michael Lavoie and to Ray and to the entire team for all of the work that went into not just the presentation, but the great work that's happening in our buildings. We had a full report, and that was followed up then last night by an opportunity for facilities committee members to meet at Meadow Pond. And we were able to do a walkthrough of some of the beautiful new spaces. And after visiting Meadow Pond, we then caravanned over to Increase Miller, where similarly we were able to see work in progress. At Meadow Pond, we saw an almost completed library and stream lab renovation. We learned a little bit more about the vestibule in progress. We saw refurbished wing spaces that are bright and beautiful, new lighting everywhere. And similarly at Increase Miller, sort of mirroring the renovations at Meadow Pond, the stream lab and the library are a little bit further behind, but coming along, as well as the new construction on the new classrooms. So things are looking beautiful. A lot of work is already complete. And very exciting also, the John Jay Middle School playground is now officially open in between the last meeting and tonight's meeting. And vestibule work has begun at John Jay Middle School as well. So very exciting, and we're on schedule, we're on budget, and things are going really well. So thank you to the team.
Thank you, Marjorie. Bill, did you want to report on Finance Committee?
Sure, we met last night, and we started off with a report, first year on pre-K. Alex and Ray went to visit the facility and the kids, and everything seemed to be going great. I know they have a follow-up meeting coming up to maybe try to expand the program, which would be really exciting. There's a lot of interest in that. More to come. We also had a very lively discussion about the health insurance that we were trying to look at some options, some alternatives. There's a lot of very complicated situation. It is our second largest line item. We spend $32 million a year, second to the salaries of the district. And so we're going to be looking at, gathering data, looking at alternatives. The second charge is our 5-year financial plan for 2030. We looked at Briarcliff's plan, we looked at Somers' plan, and we're going to work with those, get a template, get a framework, and start to pull stuff together for that. And that's it.
Great. Excellent. Parent council?
Yes, Parent Council has had one meeting. It was about 5 weeks ago. But it was lively. It was the first meeting of the year. So everyone was kind of excited about all the kickoff to everything. Ray presented kind of the framework for KLSD 2030 and kind of what those meetings would look like and how the year would progress in that way. And there was a lot of sharing of the calendar. As you know, the first month of school, it seemed like there was an event almost every night by Parent Council, which was amazing. And then some nuts and bolts things, how to bolster attendance at events. There's some new turning in receipts policies, things like that they had to cover. And the next meeting will be next Friday morning.
Great, thanks. Policy?
Yes, thank you. We had our first meeting of the year on September 27th, and we took a step back to look at where we are with our policy manual as a whole and talked a little bit about the drivers for why and when we update and revise policies. We have a policy on our consent agenda tonight for first read, and stay tuned for some future policies, but that's it for tonight. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Sustainability?
Yeah, I'll just share that our first meeting is next week, but we had a planning session yesterday. So Bill, Barbara, and myself met with the cabinet to talk about sort of what's the plan for the year. And we stayed with the main three that you're very familiar with. However, we did spend a little bit of time looking at the relatively new 3-year plan for the district around sustainability. And I think we're very pleased with the way that that's coming along. It's still kind of in draft mode, but we're getting there. And so we'll share more after next week when the full committee meets. So this was just a preliminary prep session, but we went through the whole plan. We laid out an agenda for the first meeting next week, and we're kind of excited to get going again, hit the ground running. A lot of big initiative.
That's great, thank you. LES has not met.
We meet on Tuesday?
On Tuesday. Do you want to report out on WESPA?
Sure, yes, thank you. There have been 3 advocacy meetings so far. There was one in August, September, October. We made our way through the NISBA resolutions, and actually tonight is the meeting of the voting on the NISBA resolutions. I attended the meeting up until this meeting, and it might still be going on after this meeting, so I'll jump back on if it's still in progress, which it might be. And then I mostly wanted to just put in a recommendation for a couple of upcoming programs. Friday, October 18th is the first of 3 in a series of what is called Money Talks. And the first one is School Budgeting 101. And this is with 2 of Lisa Herlihy's colleagues, actually, from Briarcliff Manor and Dobbs Ferry, John Brucato and Ron Clamser. I thought those names might be familiar and you might enjoy knowing that. And they did this Money Talk series last year. They did an amazing job. This particular one on School Budgeting 101 is from 12 to 1:30 p.m. via Zoom, so it's very convenient. And if that doesn't work with your schedule, I also wanted to recommend a program on Monday, October 28th. This is in person down at the Bosie's Valhalla from 6:30 to 9 p.m. I'm definitely going to go, and I would love it if anybody else wants to join me. It's for board members and superintendents, for roundtable talks with board and superintendent counterparts at districts in the region. And the topics include community engagement, student board members, chronic absenteeism, student mental health, and cell phone policies. So I thought I would just mention that here tonight so that there's plenty of time. People can look at their calendars, and it would be great if we could have a good showing. Thank you so much.
It's all right if I can take a second. So as a board, you've got a few things at your table there. So as we know, the New York State Identifies Week, just with a little different cadence in our week, it's next week as far as recognizing board members for the difference that they make in their local school communities, for the children that are with us today and the ones that are going to come in the future, and making those plans for that work. So just wanted to express my thank you for everything is just coming to be new into the organization, a new member of the family. So thank you as you've greeted me here. And then I do believe we also have, I think Mavis is here tonight, just to say a few words from the Parent Council and their appreciation. And so thank you, Mavis. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Mavis Wright, co-president of the John Jay High School PTO and the Katona-Lewisboro School District Parent Council. It's my honor to be here tonight on behalf of the Parent Council to express our thanks to the board Education members. In recognition of this special week, we join the state of New York and our entire community in saluting you. During this commemorative week, especially, we recognize the tremendous contributions made by school board members across our state, and particularly you, the KLSD Board of Education members, who have the weighty responsibility of leading our schools. Your outstanding leadership and integrity, along with your sincere concern for our children's well-being, are the major contributing factors that make Katona-Lewisboro a leading school district. We salute your ability to bring your own different contributions and perspectives to the table to ultimately arrive at the best possible outcome for our students and our schools. All of us are extremely fortunate to have such a dedicated group of volunteers leading our school district and looking out for the best interests of our children. We want to thank you for your hard work, your commitment to our students and our community, and your vital mission to continually improve the education provided throughout KLSD. We recognize and appreciate the countless unpaid hours you spend serving our students, faculty, administration, and staff. Our sincere thanks and gratitude to every one of you who has stepped up to guide and support outstanding education.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And thank you for our delicious treats that you shared with us and our gifts. We really appreciate it. And you are also a group of volunteers who put in a lot of time and energy, and we appreciate all the PTO presidents and vice presidents and executive committees and all the volunteerism that you do on behalf of students. So thank you as well. Do we have any other board announcements?
I just have one. So Julia and I had an opportunity, this was last week? Anyway, between the last meetings, to attend officer training at BOCES. And it was really informative. I learned a ton. And Rory, actually, there were some talk about our sustainability efforts and how impressed at KLSD.
Good.
And how impressed they are with where we are in our goals, and they had heard about all the great things. So I know you've, really been involved in that for a long time, so thank you. It's
Yeah.
recognized across the
We
county.
connected with them a little bit through Green Westchester last year, and I think that it's starting to get out there that we're actually quite a long way ahead of most of the districts around us. That's great to know.
Yeah, so
I'll
it was,
connect with you separately on it, thanks.
yeah, it was great. Not much else was said, but they are aware of what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah, so.
And just the NISBA annual convention is going to be in New York City, October 21st, I believe, and 20th. And Marjorie and I are going to be going down for the day.
Great. Thank you for doing that. We appreciate it. Okay. All right. Without further ado, we have our presentation from our external auditor. I'm sure that Lisa will introduce them, but if I could for a minute, just wanted to name the members of the audit committee, our community members, and just thank them for their time and energy. So Bhavna Bahal, Dan Imaselli, Peter Jovanovic-Monti, Michael Looper, Brian O'Riordan, and David Proskin. So thank you to them for being a part of that committee and for bringing their expertise in audit to that group. So take it away.
Yes, thank you, Juliet. So tonight we're joined by our external auditors, Jeffrey Shaver and Caroline Koff from PKF O'Connor Davies. They will be presenting our external audit, which is the audit of our financials for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2024. And I just would like to take the moment also to thank all those who participated in the audit, specifically in the business office, Agata Sumsky, our district treasurer, and we had Susan Morgan, who also, and thank you to the board for allowing us to bring in a sub-treasurer during that period. We didn't have a treasurer, and that was during audit too, so that was very helpful. So thank you to Susan Morgan, Gail Weiss, who's our bond bookkeeper, who's also been really a great support to us, Karen Carroll, our purchasing agent, Amanda Otley, payroll clerk, Andy Wallach, who's at our front desk and who's also accounts receivable, and Donnie Gannon, who does our accounts payable, as well as Jeannie Stein, and of course, Kim Monson, because they're always great supports to us. The external audit begins in April or May with the preliminary work in the business office, with further on-site work, which happens for a week or so during August. Once in draft form, the external audit is reviewed by our audit committee, and thank you again to those members of our community, as well as our Board of Education members, Julia, Lorraine, and John. And as was said, so we went over more thoroughly, we reviewed it, as well as discussion of the corrective action plan of any items that are mentioned in the audit. So we would just like again to thank everyone, and I will turn it over to Jeff and Caroline.
Thank you, Lisa. That was the most thorough introduction I've ever gotten. Thank Lisa for that. She said half of what I was just about to say. So I can make this, we'll make this a little quicker, so thank you, Lisa, very succinct. My name is Jeff Shaver. I'm a partner with PKF O'Connor Davies. Happy to be here to present the results of the audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2024. As Lisa mentioned, we were here back in August. Carolyn Koff is the audit manager. I'm going to allow her to take you through some of the pertinent information in the documents. She was the person in charge of the staff we have here, kind of directing, making sure everything is going right and everything is done properly. And I'm kind of the overseer on top of the audit manager, supervising the entire audit and making sure that, of course, everything's done up to our specifications. In accordance with auditing standards and accounting standards. And with that, I'm going to hand this one to Carolyn to take you through the financial statements.
Good evening, everyone. And just like Lisa said, originally we do come in June for the preliminary audit, which focuses on internal control testing. And then we return in the first week of August to perform the financial statement audit, which then we determine what the results are and if the numbers are fairly stated. That gets summarized in 3 audit opinions, which are listed in the financial statements. The first one is right after the table of contents. This is the independent auditor's report. This year, the district received an unmodified opinion, which is also known as a clean opinion, and the most favorable opinion that the district can get, which is great. The second opinion is towards the back of the financial statements. This is the report on internal control in accordance with government auditing standards. If we did find any deficiencies in internal controls, this is where it would be listed. However, we did not find any deficiencies that led to any material weaknesses. The third opinion follows directly after that, which is the report on compliance in accordance with uniform guidance. This opinion is necessary when the district exceeds $750,000 of federal monies in a single fiscal year, which triggers a single audit. This year, the district did have one. We audited the special education cluster, and you'll see on page 80 of the financial statements that there were no findings for the single audit. Separately, we did issue a report on extra classroom activities and a report to those charged with governance. The report to those charged with governance reiterates the findings in the 3 opinions. And if there was any indications of fraud that we identified, they would be listed there. There were none for this year. To jump into the numbers, on page 50 of the financial statements, which is the schedule of revenues, expenditures, and changes for the general fund, you'll see towards the top that the district had a budgetary surplus of $3.6 million this year. The main 2 components of that are $1.7 million in use of money and property, which represents interest due to the high interest rates this year. And then secondly, you had a $1.2 million surplus in state aid, which is determined by New York State's general aid formula. Towards the bottom of the page, you'll see that the district also had a $1.36 million surplus in expenditures. When we combined the 2 surpluses, that brings us to an overall surplus of $5 million. This is offset by the anticipated use of fund balance that was established during your adopted budget, any amendments, and it also includes encumbrances from the prior year. So that brought us to an overall net income this year of $970,000. The district started the year with a fund balance of $24.5 million. So when we add the $970,000 of net income, it brought us to a final fund balance of $25.52 million. There are different components that make up that fund balance and different restrictions, which are outlined on page 49 of the financial statements. Making up the $25.52 million, you have non-spendable fund balance of $114,000, approximately. $16.77 million of restricted fund balance, $1.23 million of assigned for purchases on order. And then when you take the overall fund balance of 25.52 and you subtract out the restrictions and the assignments, that brings us to an unassigned fund balance of 4.95 million. New York State limits this to be 4% of the subsequent year's budget, and the district is currently at 3.99%, which is great. I'd also like to point out that the different restrictions that the district has are tax certiorari's, unemployment benefits, employee benefit accrued liabilities, ERS, TRS, liability claims, future capital projects, debts, and debt service. Of these restrictions, 4 also have money set aside for the next year, which are $25,000 for the unemployment benefit, $238,000 for the employee benefit accrued liabilities, $477,000 for ERS, and $10,000 for debt service. When you add those together, it comes to $750,000, which gets added to the designated for subsequent years of $2.45 million for a final designation for the 25 budget of $3.2 million, which was the same that the district set aside in 2024. That really concludes our planned points of emphasis. Does anybody have any questions?
I only have a simple question. Did you feel like you got all of the cooperation that you needed from the administration and anybody else that you reached out to? Was there anything that was lacking in any way, or was it a fully transparent audit?
Fully transparent. The business office is excellent and always responsive and a pleasure to work with.
Thank you.
And just to add, if there were any significant issues that, like that, we would have had to have
There
notified
was
the
no
audit committee.
blocking, or I wouldn't expect that there was. It's always a question I like to ask of auditors, that it went very smoothly and that you got all the full cooperation you deserved. Thank you.
I noticed that both you and our internal auditor brought it to our attention that there's going to be a requirement to indicate compensated absences in the future. Did you want to say anything else about that or provide some broader context for us?
So I'm glad you asked. I'm going to be putting on a webinar in November. I'll be happy to send you the email. I was going to forward it to Lisa and some of her team members so they could join in. There's going to be some changes in the way municipalities, local governments need to calculate the compensated absences liability. Just for background, the district has to calculate, always has to calculate the value of accrued sick time, and some employees have accrued vacation time, the value of those amounts to be paid when someone leaves the employ of the district. The rules surrounding that, the accounting rules are changing starting next fiscal year, whereby it does not matter if an employee will get paid for that leave when they leave or not. For instance, many districts have caps on what they will pay out, say, a teacher when they retire. But say the sick days are capped at 100 days. So the way we used to do the accruals, or districts used to do the accruals, you would accrue for 100 days at whatever they were going to get paid at. The new standard says, well, if they've accrued 200 days, if it's more likely than that they're going to use those extra 100 days and only be paid out the 100, you have to do the accrual for the entire 200. So what I'm expecting, because most districts that we work with have these, we see a lot of the caps, on sick days, especially only 100 days, whatever the case may be. I'm expecting the liabilities to grow because we won't have those hard caps to consider. There's a secondary consideration, which I'm sure Lisa's thinking about at this moment, the employee benefit liability reserve, which is a function of state law. Will that reserve be tied into this new accounting standard? I don't know for sure yet, but I don't think it will be. I think the reserve has to be set aside only for actual payments to be made. So I think the old reserve, the reserve that's there now, will have to be accounted for the same way it has been, I think. just this compensated absences number is likely to increase for most districts.
Thank you for shining the light on that.
Got a question. Do we pay for sick days upon retirement, this district?
Certain staff,
do.
depending on the collective bargaining agreement, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, and we appreciate the time you spent with us last week as well, and
Pleasure.
have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So item 8.02 on the agenda is our internal audit, and the internal auditor will not be here till 8:35. So we're going to turn to public comment, which is the next item on the agenda. And then we'll, depending on how long public comment goes, we may have to just take a brief recess and we'll come back. We'll do the consent agenda and we can come back for the external auditor's report. So, sorry, internal auditor's report. So I'm going to turn to the list of people who have signed up for public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for the community to speak to the board and share your thoughts and opinions with us. We don't engage in a back and forth during public comment. We like to listen and hear what you say and reflect on it. And we may talk about it at the next board meeting, but we don't like to sort of react without having a chance to think about it. You have 3 minutes to speak. We do have a timer here just to help you. The timer is lit. It will be green until 2 minutes and 30 seconds. It turns yellow when you have 30 seconds left. So when it turns yellow, you don't have to panic because you still have 30 seconds, which is quite a bit of time. And then it will beep when 3 minutes is up. And we just ask that you respect the 3-minute timer. And first person to speak is Glenn DeFaber.
Good evening, board. My name is Glenn Faber. I'm a 40-year resident. I have 4 kids that went to John Jay. One actually taught here for 4 years. I have 4 grandchildren in the district, so I guess my coming before the board is not over. The reason why I'm coming to speak is because I was made aware that during Family Week, there's going to be a book read to kindergartners called When Aiden Became a Brother. Now, I don't want to get into whether transsexual stuff is right or wrong, but I think for a kindergartner to be read a book, I think that's more of a parent's responsibility at that age. I don't think I want a teacher teaching my grandchildren about that. I know my granddaughter's in kindergarten now, and what she learns on the bus, she comes home with, and we have to deal with that. But I don't think I should be paying tax dollars to have teachers teaching her about that. That's something a parent should do. So I'm not getting into whether it's good or bad. And being that I've been here 40 years, I've been through 4 or 5 superintendent of schools, many boards, but there's always been one constant, it seems. When one parent wants something done or changed, a book or this or that, it's always a hard time. But it seems that when one parent wants a coach removed, it's always very easy. So I believe that people are more important than books. So let's just revisit that. So let the parent do it, or an older grade. But kindergartners should not have to deal with that, mainly because they're confused normally. Why do we want to confuse them more? Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. I hope I pronounced your last name properly. Brad Guzak? Yeah. Is that correct?
All right. Good evening. Mine's going to be somewhat similar to Glenn's here. It's recently come to my attention that there's been books on marriage and sexuality being read at Meadow Pond. We need to think about what topics are appropriate for such young kids. As parents, we need to be informed what is being taught so that we can have meaningful conversations. It's our right as parents. Currently, the principal and superintendent have indicated that these materials fall under the district's initiative of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the term inclusion is being used too broadly, and it's creating a catch-all, pushing an agenda and a narrative at Meadow Pond. Instead, we, the parents, need to be informed and not from our kids coming home from school, because that's what's being done right now. We're not knowing what's going to be taught in school. They come home and they say, hey, they got questions, as little kids do. What is this book about? I didn't understand it because I'm a kindergartner or I'm a third grader. I mean, that's unacceptable. It's completely unacceptable. You know, books about marriage, gender identity, sexuality are not part of New York State's curriculum. I looked it up online, so you guys can do that as well. However, Meadow Pond has these books being read out loud. They're discussed with discussion questions, which back and forth, who knows what's being discussed, and they're also found in our library. Transparency is absolutely critical. We deserve to know what's happening in our children's classrooms. You know, finally, I think it's important to recognize this week, I don't know if you guys been reading the news, but our neighboring state of Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court ruled this week that parents do have this right, that we do have the right to understand what is being taught in our school, especially about these sensitive subjects. The court said that the school cannot provide teachers with unbridled discretion to teach non-curricular topics and must provide notice and opt-out rights based on the parents' moral and religious beliefs. That was directly from the ruling. This ruling underscores the importance of collaboration between parents and teachers. Again, it calls for the parents' ability to opt their children out of sensitive topics, and more importantly, which I'm advocating for, is to be informed, just to be knowing that this is happening. You know, in closing, I hope you guys take my concerns seriously. We need clear communication about the materials in our classrooms. You know, right now, the principal and the superintendent are telling us that this won't happen as parents, that this is just going to be done. That's very concerning, and to me, it's totally unacceptable. I'm asking to be notified before these discussions and books are being read. So lastly, you know, I just want to work together so that, you know, we can balance our children's education with diversity and the values that we hold as families, rather than finding out what's being taught when my kid comes home on the bus. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Katie Case.
Hello, I'm Katie Case, and I have 2 children in the Katona-Lewisboro School District. I'm here tonight to ask that social-emotional learning be handled with transparency and sensitivity. Just like we're forewarned of fire alarms and evacuations ahead of time, I would ask that we're also made aware of the books and topics on sensitive social issues that are being discussed in class ahead of time. The majority of families have absolutely no idea and are shocked to find out that these topics are being taught in elementary school. I've noted from Dr. Blanche's response to other families with similar concerns that the teachers are given carte blanche on what books they choose to use in each unit. And while I appreciate the autonomy this gives the teachers, I dislike the lack of power I'm feeling as a parent. I've looked up New York guidance on SEL curriculum and saw that not only is it currently voluntary, but also the benchmarks are broader, not so specific as what's being taught. And what this boils down to for me is that there's a book that's going to be read in kindergarten regarding gender identity. It specifically discusses a child born a girl as a mistake. That's what it says in the book. And that the parents fix it by giving this child a boy's name and hairstyle and becoming a trans boy. While I think this book would be a great resource for a family that's going through this, I don't think that the other 99% of kindergartners need to be thinking about gender fluidity when they're still leaving notes for a fairy and anxiously awaiting their elf on the shelf to come back. They're still in the land of the innocent, and they're highly suggestive to ideas that are presented to them, particularly by a teacher. This is a discussion that I, as a parent, would like to have when the time is right. In the meantime, we teach at home acceptance of others that look different, act different, think different. We look to find things we share in common. We talk about empathy, standing up to bullies, dealing with unwanted hugs from classmates, or feeling excluded on the playground. We talk about calm down, breathing, and ways to handle big emotions. And I feel like the school would be better served to focus on kindness and inclusivity as it plays out on the playground than to put a new complicated idea into kids' heads. This is uncharted waters, and as an adult, it's hard to grasp, let alone a child. I do not think when Aiden became a brother should be read in early elementary school. My request is for each teacher to provide a list of planned SEL books to the parents in their classroom, and for there to be the ability to opt out or teach from home on subjects that parents don't want being taught outside of their homes. I'm literally heartbroken to think I'm here as the parent of a 5-year-old thinking about this. There needs to be an open communication and a partnership between the parents and the educators, and I think transparency is the first step. In the name of inclusivity, include me in my child's education.
Thank you. I apologize if I pronounced this name wrong also. Carly Cardellino? Okay.
Thank you for taking the time to speak. After learning that my daughter's kindergarten teacher was planning on reading When Aiden Became a Brother, I have a copy with me here if anyone wants to see it, which introduces children to the idea that they can choose to be a boy or girl depending on how they feel in their bodies, a topic that is too far over their heads, in my opinion. My husband and I went in to have a meeting with the principal, Dr. Neal here, who was wonderful, and her teacher. Not only did we tell them that many other parents are having anxieties, as you can see here, over not being aware of the social emotional books that are being read during the family unit, choosing to read a book like this and not letting the parents know in an outright manner, I found out from her teacher, who told me from a one-on-one conversation during another PTO conversation, is quite frankly dangerous, as each family has different views on different things. Further, to not have the parents privy to subjects that are going to be talked about in the classroom ahead of time and then called on the phone after the fact that a book might be read if their child has additional questions, which is how I was told it would be handled, is also not what a parent wants to hear, especially when the ideologies of this book don't fall in line with our particular religious beliefs. Don't get me wrong, we respect everyone, and what anyone wants to do with their bodies is their own business. And we teach in our homes to respect everyone, whether you're in a wheelchair, you have one arm, you're this or that. But this doesn't line up with our family morals, and through the New York State human rights law, after speaking to a family lawyer today who specializes in these manners, we are protected and should be granted what we are asking. So I, along with the other parents here and on Zoom, are requesting that the book When Aiden Becomes a Brother not be read, or that parents are given opportunity to opt out of their child being present for this reading, even if they have to miss a day of school. We are also asking for a schedule of the social emotional books and when they are being read, so that parents can be prepared and also choose to opt out if something is age inappropriate deemed by the parents. The teaching of a gender ideology is a deeply personal issue, and that personal freedoms of conscience and expression should be fully supported, and the integrity and autonomy of religious institutions be respected. And that is what we were asking for. Specific books that would be read during the family unit of Mrs. Kovach's class can be shared to open up transparency here, allowing the parents to be a part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Tatiana Gil Salerno.
Of names today. Okay, thank you for having us today. Good evening, everybody. I stand before you today as a concerned parent regarding our school district's recent decisions that seem to be made unilateral without sufficient input from families. At Meadowpound, we are encountering books that may be confusing for young children, categorized under the inclusivity curriculum adopted by the district. Many parents in our community have consistently sought transparency regarding this curriculum, yet I often find out about these choices only after they have been introduced to our children. If we truly aim to be inclusive, it's vital to allow parents to engage in open conversations with their children about what they are learning in school. Like many parents, I worry that my inquiries may be perceived as unaccepting, when in fact, I'm seeing clarity about the social and emotional lessons emphasized in our schools. I am particularly concerned about the anxiety that children might experience due to exposure to complex topics at such a young age, especially as they strive to understand their own identities and emotions. In light of pressing social issues such as anxiety, stress management, and the need for belonging, it appears that Medopan prioritizes discussions around gender and LGBTQ rights within its curriculum. While these topics are important, we must also address a broader range of subjects that align with New York standards and meet the needs of the majority of our students. Both in elementary and believe also in middle school, our focus should be on fostering kindness and empathy among students. While we often discuss inclusivity, it seems that the district places significant emphasis on Pride celebrations, such as the large sign display at Medopan during Pride Month, while other cultures' celebrations are less highlighted. We should also acknowledge and celebrate significant cultural events like Hispanic Heritage Month. I am Hispanic. It is crucial to promote a well-rounded understanding of all cultures and social issues to truly embody the spirit of inclusivity. I'm seeking support from the board to raise these concerns and advocate for necessary changes that encourage and balance an inclusive approach within our curriculum. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else is signed up to speak, but if anyone didn't realize they needed to sign up and wanted to speak, we certainly are happy to have you come to the podium. Okay. Thank you very much for everyone who spoke tonight. We really do appreciate hearing your perspectives, and I'm going to close the public comment session. So we can move the consent agenda, but I'm going to pull out the internal audit, which is, what number is it? So, but we can do the external audit, right? So,
Do we know they're on time?
yeah, they texted Kim
Do we
and
want to just take a recess for 10 minutes?
and then do the consent agenda
so that we
after?
can do it?
Okay.
I mean, it's,
I just feel like if we do the consent agenda, then we can be done once they're done. Yeah.
oh, okay. I see
Oh, no,
what
but then we,
you're
no, actually, we're not, because we'll still have to vote
Maybe
on.
close, so you can take care of it. I would do it all now. Yep.
All right, let's do it now.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we do
So,
15?
so if someone wants to, so.
Can we do 15, the recognition, there's the gifts at 15?
No, we can, and then just do the whole consent agenda after this? Okay, yeah, let's do that. So we'll table the consent agenda. So I'm going to do item 15, which is a recognition of donations. And we wanted to, there's a donation from Claire Aldrich of paint for the John Jay Middle School Theater, and the value is $150. So someone would like to move that item? Moved by Barbara, seconded by Lorraine. All those in favor? Aye. 7-0. Thank you for that, for our sets at the middle school. And we want to, does anyone have any board dialogue or discussion? No? So I'm going to do future meetings. So item 17 is future meetings. Next Tuesday, we have an LES Shady Lane Evaluation Committee at 6 p.m. in the district office conference room. Next Friday in the morning at 8:15 in the district office conference room, we have a sustainability committee meeting. Our next Board of Education meeting is Thursday, October 24th at 7:30 here in the library. And then the next day, on Friday, October 25th, we have a policy committee meeting at 9 a.m. in the district office conference room.
Just one?
Yeah.
That's all right, and I don't want to
Yeah.
take a break.
Yeah.
I just wanted to actually take a second to acknowledge and recognize our transportation team. Over the last few weeks, I've had an opportunity to, I'm not following our buses, but I did have an opportunity to follow a few of our buses. One of the things through COVID, I think we all realized that it's very difficult to get drivers. I was frankly surprised at how we do have a full set of drivers. It's close some days, but we're doing a great job. Our director's doing an outstanding job. And I had an occasion to be behind one of our buses. Not for nothing, our roads are a little tough. And I was amazed at how just this driver went from what was a paved road to, surprising to me, was not a paved road a moment later, and stopped safely. Kids are on board, kids are off board, just did an outstanding job. And I just, the first people many our kids see in the morning are our drivers, and at the end of the day, they see our drivers. And it was really something to see, and kids waving goodbye as they're getting off the bus to the driver. And I can be such a job in a position that is not often recognized. Without that, this just doesn't happen. And I just wanted to say that and thank you to all of our drivers and our team that leads there. And you look at our vehicles, notice that first one that came up, they're shiny, they're taken care of, they're looking good. And so there's a lot to be said. There's a lot of pride that exists in that part of the organization. So I just want to say thank you to the transportation team. So thank you.
Can I just comment on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Some years ago, as part of the finance committee, we evaluated the cost of transportation at KLSD, and we did a peer group analysis of how much it was, and it actually turned out to be more or less the same, about in the middle. But as you know, we run our own fleet of buses, we have our own fleet of mechanics, there are people who clean the buses, there are people who do all the logistics, it's complicated. And so we were contemplating outsourcing the fleet at the time. And we decided that we would seek community input about the bus drivers. And it was overwhelming then, and it probably is the same today. The level of support that people in the district feel about our drivers, the amount of care that they give to the children and to the parents, if the parents aren't home for whatever reason, it's a linchpin to the way we operate the district. And I'm so glad that you call that out. These guys, I know Nora does a great job leading them, but all the way down to the people the mechanics down at the workshop, every single one of them deserves a lot of accolades from the board and the district. I mean, they just do a phenomenal job. And I think the community knows that. I hope they do.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the internal auditor sent an ETA of 8:35, so I'd like to make a motion for a 5-minute recess while we wait for them to arrive. You want to second that? Seconded by Lorraine. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so 7-0. Thanks. 4 minutes away. Yeah? Okay, great. I'm going to make a motion to return back to public session, seconded by John. All those in favor? 7-0. And now we are going to go back to item
Something really early, probably.
8.02. 8.02, which is our internal audit. So Lisa, take it away.
I'd like to introduce Chris Schneider, who's CPA and Senior Manager from our internal auditors, RS Abrams. Tonight, he will be presenting both our internal cycle audit, which was on our stacking processes and procedures, as well as our risk assessment update. Just a quick background, STACK is a system to track and account for children. It's a platform managed by the State Education Department that helps to track and process claims for services for our students with disabilities. So Chris and Marianne Van Dyne also were here on October 1st, and they met and presented the audits to our audit committee, and they were able to ask questions and go a little bit more into depth. So before I turn over to RS Abrams, I'd like to also thank some people. Just really quickly, again, for those who participated in the internal audit, in addition to those mentioned earlier, again, I thank, the business office. And, I want to also acknowledge our former treasurer, Kim Parks, who did a lot of the work on the risk assessment, because this is all the work that's been gone on for like the last year almost. So I just wanted to acknowledge her, as well as Alex's Special Services Department, Megan Sullivan, Christine Darty, Monica Burmese, Shilpa, Sue Fowler, Lisa Farfel, and as well as I also just wanted to acknowledge Chris, as far as for the risk assessment, Chris Nelson and Paul Anello and the technology team also, because our last cycle audit was on technology, so they go back and check to see and make sure that we've made the updates that we went to. So again, everyone, there's so many people who come in touch with the auditors and just are supportive in helping us to get everything done so we can ensure that, our processes and procedures are in tip-top shape. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Great, thank you very much. So first off, thank you for being flexible. I know this was not the plan. I know it was item number 8 of many, so here I am at the end, but appreciate it very much. I just want to echo that, everything you said, Lisa, before I get started. Again, there's a lot of people inherent to an internal audit. We speak to a lot of different people, and everyone's tasked with pulling their own items and responding to questions. So it's definitely a team effort. Team did well, answered a lot of questions. So we'll go through those results today. Again, we went through in depth previously a couple weeks back, so today will be more of a high level, but obviously stop me if you have questions. We'll go through whatever questions you might have. Largely good results to report. So again, as Lisa alluded to, there is both a cycle report, which is an in-depth dive into a particular area, and then a risk assessment update, which is 2 years ago when we first started and were appointed as internal auditors, we did an initial risk assessment update, which means we do it more of a deep dive into a whole bunch of areas just to get a lay of the land and understand what the risk might be. And then we do these risk assessment updates annually. We take a couple areas of the many that we looked at. We can go into that in a little bit of more detail. And then we choose a couple, look into that, again, at a high level, but just doing some testing, doing some inquiries, looking at narratives and processes and procedures. And then we'll just give you some thoughts here as to what we found, what we think could be improved, and just where the district should be headed in terms of what we think the internal control structure should look like. So I'm going to start with the stack cycle, as Lisa alluded to. So again, just as another high-level summary, this is those reimbursements that you submit to the state to be able to be reimbursed for costs related to special education. So again, there's some guidelines around that. There's what we call these stack submissions. So you aggregate the costs that you incur for those students who are eligible for reimbursement. You submit that, and then based on what's submitted, if it's factual and appropriate and has eligible expenditures, you're able to be reimbursed for that. So this is important for districts to be able to recoup those costs. Again, special education costs can be material, very much so. So you want to be able to get as much aid on that as you possibly can. So in terms of what we did inquiries with those involved in those processes. You do use Questar BOCES to process those applications for the district, which is a good thing. It just allows those with expertise to excel in an area that definitely is complicated and convoluted and just requires that special hand and people who know what they're doing. So that's definitely a good move on the district's part. I'm always a big fan of that. In terms of testing that we did, we selected a sample of different types of students, both in district and out of district, preschool, et cetera, and just looked to see that the aggregation of costs that were reported in those stack forms was appropriate. We also do what we call a completeness test, where we look at students with IEPs, those individualized educational plans, to see here are some students that we think could be STAC eligible and could thus be reimbursed for. Did the district elect to identify those students and submit STAC forms? The answer was yes, it was appropriate. So we have nothing to report other than good things for that particular report. So that's great news. There's no corrective action plan needed. There were no recommendations there. So congratulations there. So then moving on to the risk assessment update. Again, there's a variety of areas. Just to give a little bit more background as to what a risk assessment update is. Again, across the different operational areas and functions and processes of a school, as you all know all too well, there's a lot, right? So it's our job to break these down into subsets and look into each of them as we see fit. And again, we can't look at everything all at once other than that initial year. So each year we're taking a selection based on what we've seen in prior years, what we think makes sense based on discussions with Lisa and the team, based on discussions with all of you, and then we identify things to do each year. So if you have that report handy, again, there's a matrix on here that summarizes year over year our particular control risks that we attribute to each section or at each sub-process and process, as well as for each year, what we did last year and what we did this year. So again, when I'm speaking to this risk assessment update report, just to be fully transparent as to the period that this covered, it covers the period from January 1st, 24 through August 31st. January 1st, 24 represents the point at which the previous risk assessment update ended, and then August is just when we went through this year to be able to come to this meeting. So in terms of the areas that we looked at, just so everyone's on the same page, we looked at governance and planning, which includes some sub-processes. We can get into those in a little bit. We looked at human resources within our overall process of payroll, human resources, and benefits. I'll get to that a little bit more as we talk about what we'll be doing for the FY25 cycle audits. We looked at your capital assets sub-process. We looked at your extra classroom activities sub-process, and we looked at information technology. As Lisa alluded to, we had looked at that with our deep dive cycle previously. This is just a risk assessment update. So while it includes some of what we might have done in that deep dive, it's not at the same level, but it does include, to her point, us following up on items that we might have identified previously to make sure that those are being implemented. Obviously, whenever there's recommendations or finding from us, external auditor, OSC, anybody, you want to make sure that you're following up on those, implementing them as possible, and then to the extent that you haven't, just making sure it's top of mind and that you continue to push forward things that could be advantageous to the districts. So in terms of the areas, I won't go through in detail the particular recommendations, but I will speak to some of the areas where we did change our risk determination. So again, as of last year, we have certain control risk determinations. As of this year, based on what we've done in terms of following up on prior year and some of our current year procedures that I just mentioned with those sub-processes, we either change or keep stable the control risk determination. So again, of note, in the governance and planning process that we looked at within governance and control environment, we did elevate that from low to moderate. Within state aid and grants, which we had done previously as part of that stack cycle amongst other items that we had done, we did decrease that from moderate to low. Within human resources, we kept that at low as it had been in prior year based on the procedures we had done. For capital assets, we went from being low last year to moderate this year. For extra classroom activities, we went from low to moderate. And for technology, we went from low to continuing to being low. Again, also following up on some of the other prior recommendations. Last but not least, worth mentioning is, as part of the risk assessment update, we then identify the cycles that we'll do for next year. So based on some of our inquiries, some discussions with Lisa and the team, we have identified for next year's cycle audits, so for FY25 cycle audits, the payroll processing and related expenditures cycle, as well as the benefits cycle. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions if anybody has any. Great. So then just
I do have a couple, if you don't mind, I read in the stack review that you guys make a point of saying that your procedures are not designed to opine on the internal controls related to the stack process. And you therefore didn't provide any input as to whether our internal controls were adequate or not. Is that just because that's not part of your expertise, or is that common for all internal auditing, or is that something that external auditors should be doing? It's a little surprising to me that internal controls wasn't part of the review.
Sure, I don't want to, that language is probably standard. We are looking at the internal controls. So when we're looking at that particular cycle, we're looking at the internal controls inherent to that process. So just for some context, that would mean for this particular process, the development of IEP. So then we're not necessarily covering that in this particular area. What we're looking at is more the financial side. So you've identified a student with an IEP. How is the business office and those in charge of communicating with Questar BOCES, who again is that third party doing these TAC forms for you? How are they communicating that information? How is that being reviewed? How is the district, even though you have a third party service provider, how are they providing oversight of that provider? How are they ensuring that that provider has access to whatever they need? So I guess I'll clarify
like
that.
internal controls
We are
to
looking
me.
at internal controls, yeah. So I think there might just be a,
It may be just a standard language,
yes.
and that's fine, thank you.
Correct, yeah. So I think the most important thing is that we're not providing an opinion necessarily. It's different than an external audit, which you might have gone through. I think you went through today, right? Yeah, so an external audit provides an audit opinion. You'll see that in the beginning and at the end. We're not providing an opinion here. What we are providing is commentary on observations, and then to the extent that there are observations, recommendations. That's the nuance there. So that's probably what you're
It
mentioning.
did say opinion, yeah, thank you.
Just with regard to the charters for the extracurricular organizations,
Sure.
do you work with districts that you could provide to us as exemplars of districts that are doing this?
Yes, absolutely. So for those who just want some context on that question, one of the recommendations here is around charters. Per SED's guidelines, they do recommend that you have an annual, well, two things. One, when you first develop a club, they would like for a charter to be established. That charter would include a variety of information. We detail some of that there, but top of mind for me would be the name of the club, the purpose of the club, and then on an annual basis, you'd want to be approving at these meetings, which I know that you do, the student treasurer and the representatives of the students, as well as the advisors there. So I think the idea behind it, just interpreting SED's guidelines, is that you want that spirit of that club to be very apparent, and you want the fundraising activities and activities otherwise that might be inherent to that club to be very apparent, because you don't want ever, as you know, as board members, to have anything that the school is doing be either misrepresented or not in the spirit of what you would want students to be doing. So by doing that and setting that foundation, it just allows you to have that level of oversight that you would want to have a clear vision for what that club represents. So yes, there are forms that are available. There's some, they don't necessarily have a form that's in the SED pamphlet. It's this voluminous packet that you can all look at if you're ever bored, but just wait for me to tell you about it. You don't have to read it. So, but beyond that, yes, I have examples from other schools, so we can definitely get those to you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Great, thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
very
and
much for
appreciate it,
making
yeah.
it here. I know you had double duty tonight, and we really appreciate it.
Okay, I was listening to the Yankees game. I'm a Mets fan, but it's entertaining, so. Go Mets.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. And with that, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Before we
No, we
adjourn,
have- don't we- Oh, sorry. Wait, sorry. So now.
do you mind, Julie, do you mind if I just make one quick remark? I just think that we'd be remiss in not saying thanks so much to Kim and to the administration for these wonderful gifts. I know it happens every year. We almost take it for granted, but it's so lovely to walk into the room full of flowers, and I'm sure we have apples and other goodies in here. So thank you.
Thank you,
Kim. You're
guys.
wonderful. And
Thank you.
thank you to all you guys. We really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank
Thank you.
you.
It's our pleasure to serve. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Roy. Someone like to move the consent agenda? Moved by Barbara, seconded by Lorraine. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you for reminding me. Now would someone like to make a motion to adjourn? Motion by Bill, seconded by Barbara. All those in favor? Aye, 7-0. I'm going to run outside because there's northern lights outside right now.
Ooh,